Good afternoon, I'm Vic Donahoe with the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Today we're here to launch a Stopped Drug Driving campaign due to the increase in the number of drunk driving fatalities we're seeing here in Tennessee. It is an honor for me to be on the podium here with my distinguished colleagues, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Health, the Commissioner of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security, and most importantly, someone that's going to share a very personal story of a drug driving crash that impacted their family's life. Now it's my distinct honor to introduce the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Safety, Commissioner David Perkey.
Thank you, Vic. And if you want to do something important, you do it in the middle of the Capitol complex, and that's where we're at today because this is important. We also have colleagues here from the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. I'm glad to have you all also. About 51 years ago, a little boy was woken up in East Tennessee in the middle of the night and taken to an emergency room by his mother. And we were told there that my 16-year-old brother had been killed in a car accident by a drunk driver. Now that's been a long time ago, and I was only 7 years old, but as I was sharing with Miss Leonard, that's something you never forget. I have his picture on the 25th floor on the credenza behind my desk, and it's the best example to me of drugged driving and impaired driving. What an honor it is to be here with Miss Leonard and share this day with her. Unfortunately, we have a bill in the legislature that's up at 1:30, and Miss Leonard, I'm going to have to leave the podium shortly afterwards, but again, what an honor it is to be here and hear their story and participate in her loss. So I appreciate each of you being here. It's my privilege now to introduce the Colonel of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Tracy Trott is a 40-year veteran of state government. He and I used to be state troopers together, and again, it's my privilege to introduce Colonel Trott at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Obviously, any type of impaired driving is a big problem in Tennessee. It's the #1 enforcement priority of the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and it always will be. We're beginning to be concerned with the rise in the amount of drugged drivers that are operating on our highways. The numbers are approaching alcohol impairment in this state, and we need to do something about that. We train a lot of our troopers as drug recognition experts to combat some of this drug driving. Social attitudes are changing toward marijuana. We're seeing more marijuana-influenced drivers on the roadway, and we're going to do everything we can in our power to keep these people off the road and to keep them from hurting someone and having a tragedy like you see in front of you today with these pictures. We work every day to prevent these things from happening. Unfortunately, we're not always successful, but it is our #1 priority, and it will remain so as long as I'm Colonel, and we want to do everything we can to rid our highways of impaired driving. Thank you, Vic.
Before I introduce Mr. and Ms. Leonard, I also want to thank District Attorney Ray Crouch for being here. He was the prosecutor in the case that involved Mr. and Ms. Leonard's family. I also want to thank the TBI. To my knowledge, this is the first time we have had the TBI at a traffic-related press event. And I want you to know the importance of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's toxicology unit. Without their expertise and their forensic scientists, prosecutors would have a difficult time prosecuting these drug driving cases. So I want to thank them for being here. They'll have a few remarks just in a minute. So now it's my honor to introduce Mr. and Ms. Leonard. They're going to give you their personal impact story of what drugged driving did to their family.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Joey Leonard, and this is my wife, Tammy. We just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be one of the first to speak at a drug driving event, and it's an honor to share our story. We're here to help raise awareness concerning drug driving in hopes that we can prevent another family from experiencing the tragedies we faced. We're also here to provide a voice for our loved ones who cannot be here with us today. 3 of our family members were killed instantly in October of 2015 when their car was hit head-on by a drug driver. Our 19-year-old daughter, Kassidy T. Leonard, her 20-year-old boyfriend, William Dale Griggs, and our 12-day-old granddaughter, Kimberlynn Griggs. Just a little bit about our family. I'm an assistant professor at Nashville State Community College, Humphreys County. My wife and I are very active in our local church and community, and because of that, communities get to know one another and you get to know the people who live with you. And Kassidy was known by so many people in our county for her humor and her big heart, but also her attitude and her hard-headedness. Kassidy had her first child at the age of 16, a son named Bradley Allen. Kassidy had many challenges during her teenage years, and because of that, Bradley had lived with us all the way up until that point. Kassidy met Will in Clarksville when she moved out of her home after graduating high school. Kassidy became pregnant with her second child and gave birth to Kimberlynn on September 30th of 2015. See, Kassidy and Will had finally turned their lives around. Kassidy held a full-time job at McDonald's in Waverly, and Will had worked at Arby's and Hurricane Mills and Sonic in Waverly, and was about to start his third job. We know that Will had never been happier than the night Kimberlynn was born. He was in awe of her, and he would have done anything he could for Kimberlynn, Kassidy, and Bradley. It was when she became pregnant the second time that she had determined herself to become the mother that she needed to be. Anytime that they were off work or on weekends, they saw Bradley. It wouldn't have been long before Bradley would have been back with them, and they would have been a family. On Wednesday, October 7th, 2015, Will and Kassidy picked Bradley up and planned to keep him until the afternoon of Monday, October the 12th. See, Bradley was on spring break, or was on fall break, so they wanted to spend time with him. At approximately 4:45 that afternoon on the 12th, they dropped Bradley back off at our home. They were only there for a short amount of time. They were running behind. See, they were headed out of town to visit some of Will's family that he had not been in contact with in a long time. My wife asked, "Why can't Bradley go with you to meet Will's family?" And Kassidy, in a moment of maturity and clarity, said, "Because we're going to be really late, and Bradley has school in the morning." On retrospect, we are incredibly grateful for her responsible decision. Because if he had went with them, he possibly would not be here today. At 5:35, my wife received a 911 text message that said that there had been a fatal crash on Highway 13 North and the road was closed. Immediately, she began to feel sick. And she said, "Joey, I know it's them." And all I could say was, "No, it's not. It's not them, Tammy." Tammy immediately began trying to contact them. She called Will and Kassidy's cell phones multiple times. Nobody answered. She sent several text messages. No replies. She paged their phones, but there were no return calls. She sent Facebook messages. No reply ever came. She called police departments, hospitals, and everyone that she could think of that might know something. Anything about the vehicles or who was involved in the crash. She turned to Facebook asking if anyone knew anything about the crash on Highway 13 North. But everyone had a different story about the crash, so we really still did not know the full truth. We had been praying and crying out to God that this crash did not involve our kids. The Humphreys and Houston County sheriffs arrived at our home somewhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock that night. Our worst fear had become reality. Will, Kassidy, and Kimberlynn were all killed instantly. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on October 12th, 2015, their car was hit head-on while traveling north on Highway 13 in Houston County, just past the Humphreys County line. We later learned the driver of the other vehicle was impaired. Toxicology showed the presence of oxycodone, methamphetamine, and amphetamine in his system. The drugged driver crossed a double yellow line in a straight section of Highway 13. He was 3 feet into the lane that Will, Kassidy, and Kimberlynn were traveling in. After hitting them head-on, his vehicle went on top of their vehicle and flipped over. You know, you see these pictures in front of you, and so many people, you think, oh, well, there was an automobile crash, there was this, there was that. But I just asked someone who is even thinking about getting behind the wheel of a car, either intoxicated or drugged, to take a look at these pictures of this car. There's nothing left. On Tuesday, March 7th, 2017, the driver was convicted of 3 counts of vehicular homicide by driver intoxication and 3 counts of reckless vehicular homicide. Sentencing is scheduled for April 24th of this year. You know, the drug driver has an extensive criminal history over the last 17 plus years across several states. He's a habitual offender with no regard for the law and no remorse for his actions. Our main goal here today is to raise awareness concerning the significant rise in drugged drivers and drugged driving fatalities. Our prayer is that one day drug driving will cease to exist and other families will never have to suffer the tragic loss of loved ones as we have. But until then, our hope is that by sharing our story, it will inspire our youth to take a stand against drugs and addiction. We hope that it will give addicts the courage to seek help before it's too late. As you can see, one of the photos up here shows a billboard which has a national hotline number for people to call to get help. We also hope it will encourage all law enforcement officers in the state of Tennessee to remain vigilant and keep drug drivers off our streets, roads, and highways. Our mission is to raise awareness of drug driving by speaking here today, speaking in schools, in jails, in rehabilitation facilities, and anywhere that will allow our voices to be heard. Our vision is to work with state and federal legislators to change or create laws concerning drugged driving. Our hope is that we can end this. We thank you so much for the opportunity that you've given us to lend our voice and to speak for those who can't. We thank you for your time, and God bless.
Thank you. What a powerful story. What a powerful impact on a family. Now it's my honor to introduce the Assistant Commissioner of Health, another partner that we share the same goals, and that's to reduce traffic fatalities by drug drivers in Tennessee, Assistant Commissioner McDonald.
Thank you, Vic, and good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to share both as a physician and as a public health professional. We all know that substances from alcohol or marijuana to prescriptions like opioids and benzodiazepines have effects on our central nervous system that can result in serious injury, certainly in the context of driving. We know that these substances have a dampening effect on our central nervous system, impairing things like cognitive functioning and psychomotor impairment. And this psychomotor impairment is what we commonly know as reflex time. This cognitive functioning is how we acquire information, how we process information, and retrieve that information. And so as we think about this in the context of driving, certainly the information of what is this street sign, what is this oncoming car, where am I going, these are all critical, very time-sensitive functions that we have to drive. And each of these substances we know impairs each of those functions and puts us at risk for deadly accidents like we've just heard about. What we see as a result is an increasing problem of medication safety and driving safety. The result of overuse and impairment is apparent in the data that we track and we've all become all too familiar with. So we know that drugged driving is more and more attributed to motor vehicle collisions. We know that motor vehicle collisions are one of the top causes of death in the state. We know that it is the top cause of death for children in this state. We know that overdoses are up in 2015. We also know that neonatal abstinence syndrome, or the withdrawal of substances from infants when they're born, continues to be a problem in this state. We have had some promising news that really is as a result of multiple collaborations of individuals and agencies and local and statewide partnerships. We know that we have started to see a decrease in the amount of substances prescribed, so that millimorphine equivalent. And we saw a decrease in that in 2016. We also know that we have seen a increase in the number of clinicians that are using the controlled substance database. We know that we're getting information to prescribers and they've become a willing partner in this fight against drug use and abuse. We also know from our partners at Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse that we've seen a decrease in youth substance use. And yet we still see staggering data and a fight that we've all got to come together around. And so it's stories like the Leonards that continues to keep us motivated. And we know that we act both from a data and a population perspective as well as from an individual perspective. And so we as a department, and I think we as individuals, really encourage people around the state to take the data that we're seeing and really apply that to themselves personally. We want you to look at your substances that you may be taking or loved ones may be taking. We want you to be able to create an intervention for yourself or for your family member for their sake as well as for the safety of everyone around them. Pay attention to those prescription bottles, to the labels that are on them if they cause drowsiness. Ask your provider about interactions that may cause drowsiness and may not be safe with driving. Look around for prescription take-back boxes. That there have been local drug coalitions and multiple interagencies and partners across the state that have put these drug take-back collection mechanisms into place across the state. So we really want to celebrate the efforts of partners that are gathered here today, and really for the bravery of people like the Leonards for being able to speak out and tell their stories. And we are proud to be able to continue to partner and really the fight against drugged driving and in drug abuse in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now our last speaker will be Deputy Director of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, Jason Locke.
Thank you, Vic. Recent national data indicates that while drunk driving is on the decrease, drugged driving is on the way up. Here in Tennessee, unfortunately, we're seeing those same trends. At TBI, through the Tennessee Incident-Based Reporting System, we find that while arrests being made by law enforcement officers across the state are showing a decrease in alcohol-related arrests, the number of drugged driving arrests is up significantly. In the last 2 years, data we've collected indicates alcohol-related DUI arrests went down 1% in 2015 and around 7% in 2016. Compare that to recent statistics for drugged driving arrests, which went up more than 26% in 2015 and another 10% last year. That's an increase of 36% in the last 2 years. In the same time period, reported DUI arrests involving a combination of both drugs and alcohol rose as well. In the TBI crime laboratory, forensic scientists in the toxicology unit test for the presence of alcohol and drugs in highway safety cases. From this testing, it is clear many drivers in Tennessee are operating motor vehicles while using alcohol, illegal drugs, and prescription drugs. In 2016, TBI tested blood samples from almost 20,000 driving-related offenses. Of those, 11,000 drivers tested over Tennessee's legal limit for alcohol at 0.08%. The remaining 9,000 drivers were tested for drugs, where we saw a wide range of results. Results from the last 2 years show a marked increase in the percentage of drivers that are confirmed to be positive for THC, the main chemical component of marijuana. We're also seeing a significant increase in recent years in the percentage of cases where methamphetamine is present. The number of toxicology samples testing positive for methamphetamine has tripled in the last 3 years. But it's not just illegal substances that we're seeing in our toxicology units. Prescription drug abuse is causing increasingly serious problems in the state. The prescription drug alprazolam, commonly known as Xanax, for example, has been found in a third of the highway safety cases that are tested for drugs. The challenge in Tennessee will continue to be education, enforcement, and testing as alcohol and drugs impact highway safety. The people taking these drugs while driving are the same people you and your family are sharing Tennessee's roadways with. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. What you see is a collaboration between state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies and partners to combat drug and drunk driving. You have the prosecution team, you have the forensic scientists that test the blood, you also have the enforcement side and the education sides. I appreciate all of the words, the comments that have been here, that have been said today. Most importantly, I appreciate the family and the impact statement that they provided to you. And I would leave you with this. Voluntary compliance is the most and far-reaching thing that anyone can do to combat drug driving, is voluntary compliance. Then we don't have enough enforcement officers to arrest everyone that's under the influence or that takes that chance to drive under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So I ask for your voluntary compliance. I thank everyone for being here.